Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulina ma ba'd. I mean, this is actually very important. Somebody's asking about the 15th of Sha'ban, but this, I just want to explain something in this quick audio, is an issue in usul al-fiqh. It could be 15 Sha'ban. It could be whether you're praying 8 rak'at or 20 rak'at. It could be anything which is connected to the principles that we are going now to share. So now, when it comes to the 15th of Sha'ban, okay, there are three main groups of scholars. Okay, one group where they have said that it's bid'ah and it requires evidence, and ibadah is tawqifi, and because there is no evidence, there is nothing to be performed on that night, and there is no relevance to that night, there is no importance to that night because we have no evidence for it. That's the first group of scholars. And I would say that's probably the majority of the ulama of hadith, as been mentioned by Ibn Rajab and Ibn al-Jawzi before him, and others from the ulama. Okay, the second group are those who say, yes, it is a night of virtue, it is a night of great importance, it is a night of ibadah. And what they have said is, okay, some of these narrations, in actual fact, most of these narrations, in actual fact, maybe all of these narrations are da'if, and they would probably accept them having some kind of weakness in them. But what they have then said is, okay, this is from the fada'il. And because it's from the fada'il, we will worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this night. And this is what you'll find from the four madhabs. The Hanafis have said, Ibn Nujaym, for example, Imam Shafi'i himself has said, this is a night where a person needs to exert himself. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah says, كان السلف يؤذمون تلك الليلة. They used to give importance to that night, which was the 15th of Sha'ban. So that's another group of scholars where they have basically said there is importance and a person should be worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that night, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive a person's sins on that night. And then you've got another group of scholars, we could probably say the in-between, where they have basically said it is not a night of reverence when it comes to worship, but it is a night where some of these narrations show that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes down and he descends, وَيَطَّلِعُ عَلَى خَلْقِهِ, and he speaks to his creation. يَنزِلُ فِي سَمَاءِ الدُّنْيَا, he comes down to the sky of the dunya, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives everyone except for two, and some narrations mention two, and some narrations, two different, and some narrations, and the ulama have said that we can, put all three into the category of those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives on that night, except for the mushrik, except for the mudmin, al-khamr, the person who has an addiction to some kind of intoxicant, and mushahin, and the person who has some kind of disagreement with his brother for a wily affair which he hasn't rectified it. So those scholars have said, look, and this is where Shaykh al-Albani's position is, etc. They have said, look, the hadith are weak. This one seems to be Hasan, and we would say, yeah, it is a night of importance. But again, ibadah is tawqifi, so they will say, no, there isn't anything that has been legislated specifically for that night, but it is a night which there is importance to. Now, here's the point. Now, I'm not trying to go into the ahadith. Like I've said, the majority of Ahl Hadith have rejected that hadith, despite the fact that Shaykh Al-Albani, with all our love and respect for him, who has made it Hasan. Some of them have said, well, it has Abdullah ibn Lahiya, it has Walid ibn Muslim, they used to both make tadlis, it has people who are munkar in the chain. So there is no way of us making that narration as Hasan. So there are responses, but my point here, and this is what I'm trying to get at, and this is how we started off the discussion, which is, if there is a legitimate scholarly opinion based on ijtihad, then that must be respected. Yes, you explain and you clarify and you say, well, the correct opinion, or what seems to be more the correct opinion, and then you justify it by, using your evidences and the scholarly positions on that. However, if a person has a different stance to you and it has a legitimate discourse within scholarly ijtihad and there is dalil for it, then that must be respected. Now, this is very important. So a person will say, well, I thought the scholars have said it's bid'ah, and bid'ah is something which is wrong. Yes, that is correct, because if a scholar doesn't agree with another scholar and the evidences that he has brought, then he would say that that person's view has no basis. And there is no evidence. And if there is no basis and there is no evidence, then it's a bid'ah, by definition. Because you're doing an action which has no precedence. But does that mean that that bid'ah is a bid'ah where a person has fallen into a major sin? Is that a bid'ah which is now, taking a person outside the fold of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah? This is why we have to understand what this masala is about. 8 and 20 and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what else we can add to this. If there is a legitimate ijtihad, Salatul Qiyam, Wallahi al-Azim, in this masjid, I have seen people come to Qiyam al-Layl and they sit at the back. And they don't join the Jama'ah. Du'a Khatm al-Quran. Every year they finish the Quran in this masjid, in the Masjid al-Nabawi. And people walk out when the Imam is still praying. Now, I'm not sure if I want to go into this right now, but some of the scholars have said there is an ijma', that even if you differ with the Imam that you are praying behind, you cannot split off for him. Ibn Taymiyyah brings this and he says, for example, if you're praying behind a Shafi'i and they do the qunut in the Fajr Salah, it's not permissible for you to break off from him. So now, my point here is that we have to understand and we have to be wise in what is ijtihad and how to understand the different ijtihadat. Yes, the scholars will explain the mawqif and the position. Yes, the scholars will say, well, it is bid'ah and there is no sound evidence for it. But does that mean everyone who has a different opinion to you is a mubtadi', or he has fallen into bid'ah, or he has an opinion which is not to be held as anything which is, conclusive or respectable? This is why we need usul al-fiqh. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us of those who understand and follow the religion in the best possible way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us fiqh of the religion and the best of ta'wil. هذا والله أعلم. صلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.